Welcome to True and Unpolished. Through this podcast, our intention is to uplift, amuse, and inspire you to create more of a life you'll love. Let's get authentic, everybody. Well, hey, y'all. Hey, everybody. So, Mayor, I got a tattoo.
Did.
I did.
You told me. That is so exciting. I was kind of jealous and mad because you were supposed to be on a plane to come see me, but I'm really happy for you.
Oh, thank you. I know I truly did not. I knew that I was to have been there, and it just didn't occur to me when I sent that to you. When I sent you the picture or sent you the text, it's because I really wanted you to be a part of it. And then when you responded, I was like, oh, yeah. Like, I'm texting her that I'm doing this fun tattoo thing and I'm supposed to be with her. So I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it. No, I'm really happy for you that you were able to do that. And so I didn't know that you were going to do that, of course, until you sent me the picture. So what sort of triggered that? What was your reason for doing that?
Well, okay.
On that day when you were supposed to come see me.
Well, on that day, what transpired is my husband took our boys away to be with his dad and his brother and his brother's son. So they were doing this like dude thing because I was to have been away. I like planned to be in South Carolina at the same time. And I didn't for several reasons, but one of which was that stuff went down with my son medically that I couldn't leave him. But so they had pulled out, and I thought to myself, what do I want to do today? Because I had the whole house to myself, and it was going to be for 2 days. I was going to just be me. And so I felt more like the younger version of myself. And then
that was a fun version.
Yeah, she's fun. So I another friend, hello friend, I'm sure you're listening, was texted me and said, no pressure, but I know you're by yourself. So if you want to get together, what should we do? And I said, I know what we're going to do. We're going to go get tattoos because she had wanted one, and hers had symbolism and meaning for her. And I have always said, because I got one when I was 18, and I'm sorry, Mary, because you've heard this story a million times, but when I was 18, this is when you used to have to cross state lines because it was illegal in South Carolina to get a tattoo. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I had to go to Georgia, like the state line. And when I was 18, and I was going because I was going to get the Japanese symbol for courage. And then I got there, and they had on the wall, like all these things you could get. And I saw this smiley face sunshine, and I was like, oh, that looks cute. And so I got a smiley
face sunshine.
That's correct. So I had tried to be deep and profound and have symbolism in my tattoo the first time, but this time I really nailed it. I did not change my mind when I saw the Smurfs on their wall. And so my husband has talked about
I think that is like, that's how our ego works. Our ego confuses us. Don't get this timeless tattoo of a symbol of courage.
Yes.
But more like, let's go with this spontaneous smiley face sunshine.
That's right.
Because that will be something that you'll never regret.
That's right. And that will be so cute when other people see it. You know what I mean? My husband has been talking for a long time about getting a tattoo, which he hasn't. And so every once in a while, he'll say, oh, I'm going to get that as a tattoo. And then he'll say, oh, I'm going to get that as a tattoo. And I have always said, I will never, ever get another tattoo because I almost passed out the first time. I mean, literally almost passed out from pain because I was like out of my mind in pain because it was on a bone. This
So
is a long
Andy had
story.
to go to another state to get it. So,
Yeah,
well, okay. So what did you get?
that's what I'm trying to tell you.
That's the question of the day.
That's the question. So I'm trying to give my husband credit because the last one he said was, oh, a lotus, because we did with a friend artist here who does like create alongs and painting.
Oh, is that Stacy Ann? We're gonna have her on in a
Yeah, Stacy Ann. Yes, that is Stacy Ann, and she's gonna be coming on because she's starting a new podcast. And so we were doing a lotus. It's no mud, no lotus flower painting, and we were doing that together, he and I. And he said lotus would be so cool. And as soon as he said it, I was like, that is the perfect one. That is the perfect tattoo. Like if I were going to get one, I'd get that. And this year has been pretty mucky. It's been a year of a lot of mud. And so I decided that I wanted to get this lotus as a declaration, as an intention, that at the end of this year, at the end of this muck, what is going to happen is this flowering of the lotus. So, and it's tied into my New Year burning bowl that I do, where I release something. And what I wanted to release was the next protective layer around me. And I didn't name what it was.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That was a real
I know.
Tricky
I know
decision.
I feel like this coming year I'm gonna do a real softball one. Like I'm gonna be like,
yeah, you think you are, and then what happens?
Yeah,
I know, because we were talking about this because I chose the word open, and I feel, and I don't know how many people out there right now feel this way, but what you're describing sounds very similar. But how vulnerable and painful that feeling of openness can be. I mean, obviously we know that vulnerability is a strength and a gift from Brene Brown's work, and it is key to having healthy life and relationships and all that stuff, but it is risky and painful. And so I think just kind of have like knowing that and then living it is very difficult.
Yeah. And, and it's so interesting you're saying that, because this year, like if you had asked me if I was a vulnerable person, in January, I would have said to you, yes, I'm very vulnerable. I share myself, and I get a Sunday talk, and people that hear my Sunday talks know that it is very unscripted, and who knows what I'm going to do or say. So I had thought that I was vulnerable. And what I have learned, because, my husband and I are doing this couples counseling, on the Gottman method. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. So, I really and truly would have said that I was vulnerable. And what I've learned is that I'm not. I'm really not. I'm very comfortable, and in relationships and interactions if there's a role, so in my role as, a spiritual leader, in my role as a daughter, in my, if I have a role, in my role as a mom, I can do it. And if you strip away the roles, that sounds strange, but if you take away those roles, then it's me.
Well, what about mask? If you take off your mask, I mean, like a character mask.
Yeah.
Not
but I think roles mask. I think saying role is a good thing, because if you look at like Eckhart Tolle's books, Michael Singer, and Michael Singer does it perfectly. And I did this with my son. Okay. He said to me, and this is totally Michael Singer's thing, but I ripped it off. And he said, I said, so who are you? Because we were having a discussion, and he said his name, and I spelled the letters. And I said, so that's who you are, that collection of letters, that's who you are. And he started to laugh, and he was like, no, whatever. Cool. He said, I'm a boy. I am 10 years
A
old.
football star.
He is a football star, but he said, I'm 10 years old. And I said, okay, but do you remember being 9? And he said, yes. I said, so were you when you were 9? Is it the same you when you're 10? And he's like, yeah. I said, so you can't be your age, So again, it's just recognizing that the way that, as soon as we give a label to something, as soon as we label it, we take away the mystery and don't experience the thing.
Yeah.
That's how we don't experience ourselves, because as soon as we name it, it's you don't experience it. And the mind goes, oh, there it is. I can categorize that, file it under this, da da da.
Is that the same? Is that also true if we pick a side?
Explain.
If we pick a side, so this is the right way and this is the wrong way, wouldn't that kind of put us in the same place?
Yeah. Well, yes.
Because what I've noticed lately, I talked a little bit about this last time, but one of the things that I've noticed about myself, related to this practice of vulnerability or being open, is that I'm highly sensitive. I've always been highly sensitive. And I didn't always have skills to manage that, to manage my thoughts. When I was younger, I didn't have skills. And so my emotions were all over the place. Now I do have skills. I mean, I teach the skills and I practice what I teach. So I think now it's a little bit different because I do have the skills, but I'm also at the same time, as the layers are kind of coming off,
right,
that I am more vulnerable. And that means when painful things happen, when I experience painful thoughts or experience painful events, somehow I'm affected. I don't know if it's more intense, but sometimes it feels like it's just as intense as it always was, if not more.
Yeah, and I think it is more intense because you are experiencing it as a more vulnerable version of yourself, because that's what you're doing. You're peeling off the layers. So you're at a new layer. So, pain's never touched that one, but that's also, as the layers come off, you get more joy too. I mean, that's the way to it. And that's what I realized about my tattoo, because as I was getting it, it was absolutely painful, but I didn't suffer. And I've always, heard this said by many spiritual teachers, and it's definitely a Buddhist saying, but that, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And I really experienced that with the tattoo, because yes, it was painful. It was very painful, but I did not suffer because I chose it. I was choosing the pain. And so I realized, oh, so it's about, when the pain comes, it's about saying, I chose this, and accepting that you chose it. And it's temporary, because the tattoo's he's going to be at the end of doing the needle in my arm. And so it's temporary, and it's mine. It's my choice.
Right. Well, see, I love what Gary Zukav teaches about just life and souls in general. And basically, my abbreviated version is that we are all in earth school. That's what he calls it.
Yeah.
We come to life to learn lessons, and that we actually, and this may be far-fetched for some people, but for me, it gives so much, it resonates a lot, and it gives so much comfort in that choice. But basically, we choose to come here and live out our lives so that we can learn to be more of who we are, grow into the fullness of our souls.
Mm-hmm.
And so Earth, all of Earth is like a classroom where we learn and grow. And so if we approach life in that way, and when I do approach life in that way, that I choose to be here, I chose to be here,
Yes. Yeah.
somehow that is less painful.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll have to say, I have always bristled at that part of Gary Zukav's teaching. The version that really resonates within me is that we come to experience, like, we are one with God. We are one, that energy, that power that is God. And we come so that we experience ourselves. And so it's like God expanding by being here. And so each one of us is the divine experiencing the divine. And again, we still choose it, we still choose it, but we chose it because we know that nothing can really hurt us because we are
Mhm.
one with God. It's so the Course of Miracles talks a lot about this. It's like, we are, only love is real. So anything else isn't real. It's an illusion. So we really are invulnerable. So us trying and attempting to be invulnerable, the truth of who we are is invulnerable. It's the layers of personality that we added to ourselves very early on and
Right.
began doing, the first time we labeled something, the first time, Eckhart Tolle says the first time a child is given a toy and they say, my toy, they then believe that their identity is with this toy. And that's why when you take it away, they scream like you've cut their arm off, because they're beginning to identify with objects and things and,
Mhm.
and people. But if you look at a baby, they're a good example of pain but not suffering, because they'll
Right. But
scream and then be totally fine. You know what I mean? If they're just experiencing, they look around, they're just in awe and
yeah.
wonder because they haven't learned to label everything. And it's that labeling process that makes life painful and dead. What I have been doing for so long, and I didn't really realize it, was even through my spiritual journey and like through being on a conscious spiritual journey, choosing to be on a spiritual journey, I, in essence, was trying to transcend being human. That's what I was trying to do. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. And
Oh,
I like transcend the human experience. And I
right.
have recently understood that no, you chose the human experience. You are meant to be human. And so that again is another way to say, no, I chose this. And it takes
Right.
away the suffering part. So there is pain and pain happens. But if we recognize in that moment fully that we chose it, the suffering falls away. And
Right.
that's so powerful, because the more we do that, the more joyful we are. And the more we become who we are, which is
Mhm.
really in essence what we're doing, getting rid of
Yeah.
all these layers and roles and labels, we do experience magic and joy. And,
Yeah.
and I also said the intention this year of magic, like, because I
Yeah.
turned
That
40.
was going to be your word.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I wanted to, but in order to see that, you also have to peel away something that you thought was your identity. You know what I mean? You have to
Yeah.
become aware of it. And so, just like the child, when you take the toy, it feels like it's hurting us because
Mhm.
we've identified with it, my toy. So it's now I've identified with it. So we've identified with these layers and these protective mechanisms and so it is painful.
So one of the things that we haven't talked about that we're going to talk about is brain spotting. And that's something that you have been doing. And I've done EMDR and I've seen it in my practice. I've seen other therapists do it. Then I've done it for my own healing. But what's your experience with that been as far as what we're talking about? Because what I understand and believe is that, healing those parts of ourself, and in this case our brain, so that some of the unconscious thoughts and behaviors are easier to resolve.
Yeah.
That would be the reason to look into that sort of thing.
So the reason why I started it was that well, I went to therapy. I'm getting therapy all over the place, but which I just feel like right now is the time to do that. And honestly, I feel like everybody on the planet needs to be in therapy right now. But that I won't prescribe for anybody else. I'll just say that I'm doing it. But I was getting these nudges very early on in the year that maybe there was something that I hadn't let myself know about my childhood. And I just was, so I went to therapy to say, I don't know what this means, basically.
Yeah.
And the therapist, who is a very gifted therapist, suggested to me brain spotting because they had somebody in their practice that does brain spotting. So before that, somebody I think had tried to tell me, yo, do brain spotting. And so I like went in for a session and nothing happened, but I also was not in the space. I don't, it just didn't work out. But and it's really difficult to talk about and describe.
Can I give it a shot?
Yeah.
I did some research because I've talked to you about it several times and agreed it was hard for me to comprehend, but it's a form of treatment that goes along with traditional therapies, and it was developed by David Grand in 2003. And what he discovered is that where you look affects how you feel. It's the brain activity, especially in the subcortical brain, that organizes around itself around eye position. And this is true for EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing is another form of treatment that can be helpful in resolving trauma. And in that form of treatment, what a very simplistic explanation is that where the memories are stored, the trauma memories are stored, there's a practice of helping with eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing that helps people to basically it's almost like a disconnect happens. The memory isn't resolved. You don't forget the memory, but the disconnect is between the memory and the pain. And so that you're able to kind of disconnect from the PTSD symptoms that trauma can trigger.
Right.
So,
and so I could tell too that I was getting triggered. I mean, I've learned so much through this process, but my layman's way to explain it is that, and the way it was explained to me, is that trauma is stored in this one part of the brain, and your body keeps the score, and that's a book, and it literally is in there. And what happens through brain spotting is you find a spot, you focus on an issue, and you will find the spot where what they call it is where you're activated, where you feel something strongly. Sometimes it's an emotion, sometimes it's a body movement. Just follow it, whatever your body says. If your body says lay down, And so I'm such an open, like willing, like jump into it kind of gal. I was like, okay, great. Sounds good. Let's do it. And we started, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. I really didn't. And it's good that I didn't, because if I did, I wouldn't have done it. But that probably sounds funny, but I'm very glad that I'm doing it now, because now that I'm understanding what's happening, But I do feel a release. And, what so far brain spotting has been for me is a lot of body movement, but I've also had, crying. I've had, I would look crazy. I've thought about saying, y'all record this to the therapist so I can watch it later, but I don't want to do that because I know that I'll become self-conscious because it probably looks very, very, scary.
So let me explain something real quick. This is how it works. Therapist and client work together. They work together to find the brain spot or eye position that corresponds with a specific emotional response or incident. Once on that target, the therapist and client allow the client's brain to make the connections needed to continue processing this event. So it works differently with different clients. And because you're more open, you have been able to move into it easier than a lot of people would. And so I think that, if you're listening, be aware that it probably isn't going to just happen the way that Lydia is describing. But and I think that is completely understandable, because what your brain does when you experience a trauma is protect itself, and that's why we forget certain memories, and that's why we have the PTSD symptoms like nightmares or dissociation or flashbacks. All of that is part of the brain's way of actually protecting ourselves.
Yes.
And so know that you'll be ready when you're ready.
Yeah.
And to find somebody you trust to help you work through it if that's what you need to do.
And I would say that's a huge part. I'm glad you said that. I think that the consciousness of the person leading you through the brain spotting is very important. Very, very important. As I said, I tried it once and there was nothing. And that was with another person. And I think it was where I was and where she was, and it just wasn't going to work. But I was really ready. Remember, my intention from the burning bowl was to get rid of the next layer. So that
you're like so ready. It just happens automatically.
There is such huge power and intention, you guys. Like, I'm just telling you, there is just these, and every year we know this, Mayor, every year.
Right. And be clear about what it is that you want. I think that's what I was saying earlier, and how sensitive I am. If I think like painful thought, thoughts about rejection are a big piece of what gets me, sends me down the rabbit hole, is, feeling rejected or thinking that I'm being rejected is a big trigger for me. And so, so I have to be really careful and pay attention to my thoughts before they even truly enter my experience, and so that's one of the reasons why meditation is so important. And I've really been doing a lot lately to help, and staying off social media and those kind of things, like I mentioned before.
Yeah. And what you're describing is you become more spacious with meditation, and so thoughts slow down, and breath really, if you can, breath slows thoughts down, just breathing. And I know that we've been talking for a long time, so we're going to wrap up, but I do want to give a parting gift to everybody that was given to me. In any moment that you feel triggered, yawn, fake it, yawn, and you will find that you come down.
Right.
So yawn, everybody, yawn. Just remember.
That's so funny. That is a good gift, good tip. And it's so funny because it's rude to do that in certain situations
Right.
and everything. So we've been taught not to do it. And that actually is something that, I've taught in my
Yeah.
classes and stuff is, this is actually an effective thing to do. Another one is, how you, Lydia does this a lot, but when you like shake your legs because you're anxious, or you might
Mm-hmm.
not even really be anxious, but it's kind of, some people naturally just are always moving their body and
Mm-hmm.
shaking their legs. And that is the same kind of thing. It is often in our culture seen as rude,
Yeah.
like you're being disrespectful or rude to do that. And so you have to be mindful of that, but also recognize that sometimes it can be really helpful to do these kind of things that our society has told us are not okay to do.
Which is just so arbitrary. I was just having a conversation about this with two gals that are lovely, and that because my son is autistic. I know we got to wrap up. She keeps giving me the wrap up sign. Y'all can't see her, but she is giving me the wrap up sign, and she points her finger in the air, and she twirls it around, and she's saying wrap it up, and then she
Wrap it
talks.
up,
You just
Lydia.
talked. You talk too. Okay. All
I
right. For real.
know.
We're gonna stop right here.
I'm done talking. I'm just gonna sit here and twirl my finger.
Twirl your finger. Don't twirl your finger at me. All right, everybody. You have been listening for a long time to True and Unpolished, the podcast. Let's see what happens next.